resulted in massive national extension programs within those countries, and now increasingly beyond those countries, and all across the Eastern and Southern African region. Why is it becoming exciting? Because the results are showing doubling, tripling, quadrupling of yields with the proper selection and management of fertilizer trees that are appropriate to different types of farming systems. And so we now have the National Agroforestry Food Security Program in Malawi, which has become a model that is being shared with many other countries of how not only can you use fertilizer subsidies, Malawi is also famous for that, but you can develop a sustainability approach by graduating from fertilizer subsidies to using the biological resources on the farm, the fertilizer factories in the fields, and that is what Malawi is mobilizing to do currently. Well, let me summarize. We are now seeing 17 countries across Africa that are mutually engaged and sharing their experiences and learning from each other about how the concept of evergreen agriculture can integrate with all of the other good things that are going on in developing a technologically more productive agricultural system. And indeed, recently the ministers of agriculture from across the continent got together in Pretoria and issued a call for action for a climate-smart agriculture. And we're very proud to see that they highlighted the concept of integrating trees, fertilizer trees and other trees into cropping systems as a major foundation for the development of such a resilient and adaptive agriculture in the face of climate change threats in the future. And finally, we have been now, as a basis of these examples, been striving to accelerate the sharing of these different types of models that have come out of the poorest countries of Africa, but are now being adapted across the continent and beyond. India has just developed a plan to generate billions of fertilizer trees on farmers' fields, and they tested the solutions of the particular African acacia indigenous trees in India and found them to be very, very useful and suitable. And so part of their evergreen agriculture program is, in fact, the adoption of the African systems and models of fertilizer trees in dryland cropping systems. And so we have created a partnership among governments, among the private sector, the academic and research communities, but particularly among farmer organizations and the development organizations that are on the ground advising farmers about these sorts of solutions. This partnership, which is called the Partnership to Create an Evergreen Agriculture, is now working to accelerate the process of the sharing of these kinds of models that I have mentioned this afternoon. Well, Festus, I could go on. This is a topic that is of passionate interest to me, as you know, but I very much appreciated the opportunity to share these experiences and to give a little credit to some of the poorest countries in the world who are now in the driver's seat in developing and sharing solutions to their richer, more prosperous nations. I think that's a key point for us to consider, is that South-South exchange is now going dramatically in both directions. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for that inspiring presentation. Here we've listened to two key areas here. The first is the importance of intra-regional South-South cooperation. We have seen how countries in Africa are collaborating and cooperating with one another. And the second aspect is actually the the model of scaling up where we have very strong policy support from the policymakers from Dennis's presentations. Thank you very much. On that note, I want to call on the first panel member, Mr. Ghulam Sekria. He's the chairman of Kabul Dairy Union, Kabul in Afghanistan, and he will be speaking on integrated dairy development in Afghanistan. You're welcome.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ghulam Zikriya Ahmad Zai, elected chairman of Kabul Dairy Union. Afghanistan is a country where is fight for more than from 35 years. Everybody know international community spent more money for reconstruction or development of Afghanistan, but they didn't ask the people of Afghanistan which way is so important for you. Be thankful from FAO and effort they paid attention to spend their budget, their efforts for a stable and sustainable Afghanistan, because this is an agricultural country. This is the background, project, activities, results, lessons learned, and please go ahead. German government funded project with 1,600 beneficiaries. Targeted area, Kabul, Logar, Wardak, Balkh, and Kunduz provinces. The main objectives: assist farmers to increase cattle production. For your more information, Afghanistan is an agricultural country, but more than 90% dairy products coming from outside, from the neighboring countries. Where are the development? We have to do such kind activities, services for the farmers to be sustainable Afghanistan, especially in the dairy sector. Developing, processing, and marketing structures for dairy production, developing organizational structures for the management of the dairy schemes. Increase cattle production, improvement of genetic potential, health services, fodder crop activities, animal feed production, and improvement in cattle housing, training, and capacity building. This is our structure. Poor farmer who have lived in the village, they came together, they established, according to the law of Afghanistan, cooperatives, primary cooperatives on village level. They introduced their representative to the General Committee. General Committee decided to create the Executive Committee to run all this business, to provide the facility for a legal and permanent income to the villagers, to the producers. Now, fortunately, we are able to collect money from the packet of Afghans to other Afghans to be stay in a sustainable life. Sorry. This is a practical example about the dairy development scheme in Afghanistan, especially this income goes more than 85% to the women. Always the people say human rights and women rights. If the women have not money, cash money, if they are not able to spend this money independently, how can we say this is their women's rights? I am as a representative of 1,000 farmers of Afghanistan, I am very thankful from FAO and IFAD to provide such kind facility to the important population of Afghanistan, who they are women, who they were very poor. Now, rural area is connected with the urban areas. From urban areas, money goes to the pocket of the women. This is best women's rights. In Afghanistan, before the starting of this program, the people had not legal income, but now they have legal and permanent income, and this program provided jobs for hundreds of workers who they are working in milk collection, milk transferring, processing, and marketing, and also transferring money back to the thousands milk producers, farmers. I think this is not enough. As I named some areas in Afghanistan that need for upskill, we kindly request from FAO and IFAD to support the Afghan people. In the next, we will have big capacity processing plant, and we have to cover the more area. Scaling gap and challenge. National level expansion, US dollars need 30 million. 3 projects with funding from IFAD, Italia, and IFAD, Male Ministry of Agriculture, Irrigation, and Livestock, totaling US dollar 20.6 million. Challenge. Need for market expansion, competition of dairy imports, environmental changes, and security. I want to add something about the security. More than 50 countries sent their force to Afghanistan, and they spent more money, billions of US dollars, to bring the stability for Afghanistan. But the result is not good. How can we achieve to this important impact? We have to create jobs for jobless people. Afghanistan is an agricultural country. In this sector, they have to spend their budgets to come real stability. The stability of Afghanistan is really useful for all the worlds. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shilam Sekrier, for that very good presentation. We can see from that presentation a very powerful example of a scalable development solution that has focused on value chain of dairy development. And sometimes this could actually mean the difference between life and death for some poor people in developing countries, because we're talking about issues of income generation, and it has also implications on gender empowerment. Thank you very much. On that note, I would like to call on the next panel speaker, who will be speaking on supporting conservation agriculture for sustainable agriculture and rural development, including equipment innovations for smallholder farmers, linking Brazil-generated innovations to East Africa. Mr. Saidi Mkonwa, the Executive Secretary of the African Conservation Tillage Network. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moderator, Dr. Kinifesi. The organization I represent is the African Conservation Tillage Network. We are a Pan-African organization with sub-regional offices in West Africa, Burkina Faso, in Southern Africa, in Harare, and also in Eastern Africa, in Dar es Salaam. And the key mandate is conservation agriculture, primarily for smallholder farmers. Briefly, what is conservation agriculture? And is a technology which emulates nature based on three principles of not to plow the soil, permanent soil cover using crop residues or cover crops, but also crop associations, if possible, using shrubs and trees, as Dr. Garite was showing some examples. So it's a technology which history says that it was invented in Africa, but Africa was not able to benefit from it because the innovation level was small. But the South partners, Brazil, managed to perfect it. And now we are bringing it back to Africa with several additional innovations so that it can address similar problems, tropical problems like the Brazilian smallholder farmers are encountering. The case in question is this Conservation Agriculture for Sustainable Agricultural Rural Development, CSSD project, which is funded by the German government. Started in 2004 to 2011. And the target countries were Kenya and Tanzania, with the mentioned objectives. Primarily, as I said, targeting smallholder farmers, but also looking at business, the private business sector, how it can support and contribute to adoption by smallholder farmers of this conservation agriculture technology. Why do we need conservation agriculture in Africa or in East Africa? I think the reasons are numerous. We have the problem of poverty, which is not going down still. We have the problems of declining yields. We have the problem of climate change. And when you look at all these, the South partners, Brazil in particular, have managed to transform their way of farming, and one of the cornerstones has been conservation agriculture. So in the CSSD project, two main interventions were used. One is to engage farmers through the farmer field school approach, but also individual farmers were also engaged in testing, validating the conservation agriculture technologies on their own outside the groups. But we also had other interventions like exchange visits and also supporting the local manufacturers so that suitable implements which made the African conservation agriculture not to prosper, to move a notch higher. Basically, the South-South partnership was to look at how smallholder equipment suitable for smallholders from Brazil could be adapted, could be locally produced in East Africa. As I said, the challenges that the smallholders in Brazil were facing were tropical and the same or similar to those challenges the smallholder farmers in East Africa were facing, namely soil erosion, runoff, declining productivity, and the need to produce more food over time. So some of the main outputs of this intervention were the establishment of hundreds of farmer field school groups, but we also had several thousands of farmers, 7,000 in particular, directly reached, with adopting beneficiaries being 35,000. We were able to target the private sector service providers, particularly the animal drone and tractor hire service providers, so that these could provide the direct seeding or reaping services at a commercial fee to farmers, and 80 of these were trained and are in business. But we are also able to attract the interest of research institutions, the local manufacturers, to see the value and get involved in conservation agriculture research. Some of the outcomes of this initiative is that now in East Africa, we no longer need to import some of the easy-to-manufacture tools, like the animal drone reapers or the animal drone subsoilers. This demand is locally met by the East African local artisans. We have managed to empower or to support local manufacturers, artisans, who are now able to produce some of the smaller units. And this is a milestone, because as the demand increases, the local production capacity is also enhanced. But we have also managed to attract the interest of the governments to invest more in conservation agriculture, to get a lot more initiatives functioning. And I can say here, there are numerous scaling up opportunities. For example, IFAD, FAO have shown interest, and we are in the coming 2 weeks going to have a symposium here in Kenya, whereby the EU, together with FAO and IFAD, are going to support a big conservation agriculture project in Kenya. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saidi Nkola, for that exciting presentation, which is also very much linked to the presentation by our keynote speaker. We have seen here the scalability and actually the scaling up and adoption on conservation agriculture. Osmotic spreading of conservation agriculture is evident. However, it has been hindered by the lack of equipment, and this presentation has shown the critical missing gap that has been breached. It is also a very good model of scaling up, showcasing farmer fiscals and other models of working with different levels of partnerships, including the private sector, the public-private partnerships, and others. I want to thank you for that presentation. At that point, I would like to call the next presenter, who will be speaking on Vietnam's support to aquaculture development in Namibia, and that is in the person of Dr. Moses Maruhingirire, the Director of Aquaculture, Ministry of Agriculture in Namibia. He is also in partnership with Mr. Dinh Trong, the Chief of South-South Cooperation of Vietnam. Thank you.
Master Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Moses with a decorated last name, tough to pronounce. Until now I cannot. I will be speaking on the cooperation between Namibia and Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, the Vietnamese South-South Cooperation technical assistance is in support of aquaculture development, and this is identified under the National Program for Food Security, and because this is a key sector with potential for rapid growth and rural development in Namibia. Ladies and gentlemen, FAO has been requested by the government of Namibia to facilitate the implementation of the non-operational aspect of the South-South Cooperation Program in Namibia, while the Directorate of Agriculture under the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources will be responsible for the operational aspects and technical aspects together with their Vietnamese counterparts. Fortunately, the government of Spain was able to fund the program at a tune of 1.8 million US dollars for the 5 years. Right. The outline of my talk would comprise only out of 2 items. Number 1, the outcome, and then the outputs. The outcome, fish farmers use their new capacities to develop the aquaculture activities and improve social livelihood. That was also the motivation that was given in order to get this project on the ground. Under that particular outcome, we have 2 outputs. The very first one pertains to the technocrats, the scientists, and the technicians within the Directorate of Agriculture by capacitating them to be able to apply techniques in aquaculture. And the second output pertains to the fish farmers themselves to be able to be capacitated either by the project or by the technocrats from the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources, Directorate of Inland Fisheries and Aquaculture. Ladies and gentlemen, under the very first output, the one that is focusing on the technocrats, the scientists from the Directorate of Agriculture, we have around about 8-9 activities. We can formulate them in projects. The very first one that we are looking at together with our counterparts from Vietnam is the aspect of genetic selection of tilapia species. A second one following that one is sex reversal techniques that are being applied to 3-spot tilapia. Following that is looking at feed quality and feed management practices. And another one is seed production. We have another one looking at cage culture within state dams. And one of them also is establishment of a fish museum for native fish fauna at one of our inland fisheries institutions. We are also going to, we are also going to look into a research program for initiating of indigenous species for aquaculture practices. And finally, from the very first output, we are going to establish an aquaculture extension network that is pertaining to the technocrats from the management agency. Second, there are 3 projects or activities pertaining to the second output. The very first one is the development of materials for fish farming. Second is on-the-job training of fish farmers. And finally is the development of the capacity to apply low-input techniques for the current fish farming. And that pertains to the fish farmers. Ladies and gentlemen, having said that, when we are working or have been working with our counterparts from Vietnam, we realized that there was some strength in the whole process of South-South cooperation, the way it was formulated. One important aspect is the aspect of the absence of an inferiority complex. We know that when we cooperate with our colleagues from the North, normally they would come up with projects that are donor-driven. If you do not do A, B, C, D, you are penalized, etc., etc. And in that process, you develop the complex of inferiority. But in the case when we're operating with our Vietnamese counterparts, we are equal, and we took them as peers, and the working environment has been very, very conducive. Second, the aspect that FAO is concentrating on administrative and management aspect has left the technocrats, both from the Vietnamese and the Namibians, given them enough time to be able to concentrate on operational and technical aspects of the program or the projects. Thirdly, we have developed a very, very healthy relationship with FAO Namibia, together with their counterparts in Rome as well. We are in continuous correspondence, and the project is very, very smooth, and the operation is very, very smooth as well. In this particular program, we have very intense monitoring and evaluation mechanism. You monitor on monthly, quarterly, 6-monthly, and annual basis, and we also have a midterm review, and finally, to be followed by end of project review. By doing this, we would really not deviate from the objectives of the project. And finally, the government of Namibia, particularly from the political and corporate level, has bought into the very project, and we get a lot of support from our politicians from that point of view. Life is not perfect. There are some drawbacks as well that we can call weak points of the project. The very first one that we are realizing is the aspect of linguistic barrier between us and the Vietnamese. Namibians cannot speak Vietnamese, and Namibians and Vietnamese cannot speak Namibian as well. So it's a little tough when we come to communication. So that is one of the drawbacks that we have in the project as well. And also the timelines are not respected. We started a little late, so the momentum has taken a while to be gained. So that is one of the drawbacks, and also the cumbersomeness of the FAO procedures of procurement, and also the aspect of procuring materials and equipment from either from Vietnam, from South Africa, etc., because of unavailability in Namibia. These are some of the drawbacks. And from all this, we have learned some lessons that I'm not going to talk about today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Moses, for that very honest presentation, giving a very good balance between the positive as well as some shortfalls. It is a very good example of a solution with a which has a very huge potential for the smallholder farmers. And I also want to mention that Namibia, the government of Namibia is also in the process of developing another South-South cooperation partnership with China in the area of agriculture, in addition to this aquaculture. And also it is related to the ongoing project with the government of Japan, undertaking very broad training and capacity building programs in Africa involving more than 20 countries on the same topic of aquaculture development. At that point, I would like to call on the next speaker that will be speaking on rice fish aquaculture heritage system, and this will be led by Ms. Yu Zhang, and she will be introducing her other colleagues on the related topic. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my greatest pleasure to be here at the GSSD Expo 2013, especially on the Food Safety Forum, to be here to discuss on the South-South cooperation and its development. Let me brief you some of the South cooperation projects under the FAO programs. As one of the most populous countries in the world, we value the mutually interesting projects and the cooperation with the South countries. We have conducted lots of cooperation projects with the developing countries in our efforts to meet the challenges of the food security and the MDG attainment. We have adopted two measures. One is in May 2011, we have signed up. In May 2006, China and FAO established a strategic alliance with the SSC. Second measure is in September 2008, the Chinese government announced a donation of $30 million to FAO for the establishment of a trust fund in support of the South-South Cooperation Project. China started to be part of the South-South Cooperation projects in 2008. So far, we have sent experts to 24 countries covering Africa, Asia, South Pacific, and the Caribbean, with a focus on Africa. With the projects of the South-South Cooperation, Chinese experts has contributed to more than 1,000 agriculture projects and have training more than 40,000 local experts. And we have successfully raised the agriculture yield to 30 to 60% more than the average. Our projects have been recognized by the host country, including Nigeria, Mali, and other countries. And all the projects have been visited by governmental dignitaries. The FAO has designated an example of South-South cooperation in agriculture. Now, let me brief you on some of the experiences. We have adopted some effective measures to promote South-South cooperation. The cooperation have been taken care of by the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Finance, and the Ministry of Commerce, who established an inter-ministry committee to oversee the projects. And we have also a coordinating committee that is at the ministry and provincial level, providing a good foundation for all these cooperation projects. We have also tried to make it the best to provide some logistic support for our experts. We have also conducted some linguistic training for our experts. Each year, we trained close to 200 experts. And we also have a mechanism for selection of experts. We have some consultation mechanism with the FAO to solve any problem that might occur during the conduct of the projects. Some of the challenges faces the South-South Agriculture Corporation. First, the resources contributed by the international community to SSC are not sufficient to meet the needs of developing countries. Nowadays, host countries have become more and more aware of the importance of food security, and that they have more demand for the South-South cooperation. But the funds are very limited, far away from meeting the needs. Recent years, with the rapid economic growth and the different needs of host countries, have given rise to increasing difficulty in selecting and fielding personnel by cooperating countries. And also, the difference in the different needs and level of development of the host recipient countries have posed some challenges for us in selecting experts. We are also faced with some complexity in the international situation. Nowadays, with more and more countries taking part in the SSC, we are facing with more challenging and pressing tasks. Our future vision. In 2013, we have signed the MOU with the FAO, reaching a cross-border agreement with the FAO. We have also agreed on establishing some long-term consultation mechanism for promoting SSC. We will be focusing on the Africa for enhancing the production capacity for African countries, and we will guide our academia and experts to participate in this SSC. Ladies and gentlemen, the SSC is in the full interest of developing countries and is fully in line with our world trends. We have written actually a new chapter for the South-South cooperation. Thank you, Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yu. Now, the next speaker, Professor.
下面
Now, I'd like to introduce Mr. Min-Ching Wen, Professor Min-Ching Wen, representing here the China Academy of Geology and Natural Resources, and Mr. Wang Yibing, a Chinese agronomist, to introduce you some projects on the Nigerian cooperation. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is my great pleasure to present to you, introduce to you some RFC projects in Nigeria. Rice fish culture. Rice fish culture has a very long tradition in China. According to our archaeological findings,
在稻田里游动的景象。由此，
and we can see pictures of the farm fishing culture, and it's at least 200 years before BC, China already had a culture of rice fish culture, and this sector has had steady development because it's a very typical agricultural production model, and at present this has been spread to 28 provinces. And more importantly, this kind of mode of production is very beneficial to agricultural preservation and to the livelihood of farmers. And not just rice fish culture models. And in fact, within this sector, we have introduced new species and has achieved good results. For instance, in Hunan and Guangdong provinces, we have this kind of model production. In Guizhou, we have rice with ducks, and in Hunan, Hubei provinces, we also have rice with turtles. In Jiangsu province and Liaoning province, we have rice with crawfish, and in Shanghai, the suburbs, we have rice with turtles, and all these have had an impact on agriculture. And this technology also has been spread to other countries. IFO, the Food Agricultural Organization, chose it among its list in 2005, chose the Chinese rice farming as the globally important agricultural heritage system site. And also in our northern part of the country, in Zhejiang province, this area has a 1,200 history of this kind of production. And at present, the farmers still keep a very traditional way of production, and also they have kept and preserved very traditional rice species, and also they have their own ethnic production cultures. For instance, they use the local fishes to produce like byproducts like fish powder, and all these are important fertilizers. And also there's a culture that when they marry the daughters off, they also present fish as a dowry. And also other species of fish, people have also produced kind of lanterns to commemorate this kind of production mode. This is all these ethnic traditions. In fact, all these traditions and technology have produce a very good production environment, because while growing rice, the rice paddy fields can produce food for fish. At the same time, the fish can eat up all the pesticides, and through their movements in the water, that can improve the ecosystem of the water environment. So due to this reason, this production mode is actually a very good, beneficial, and natural production base. And in Zhejiang province, they use this technology, and plus the help from the Agricultural Food Organization and the branding from this organization, which resulted in the rise of income for the farmers. Therefore, we think this is a good way of production and has multiple functions, and it has a very good traditional way of production, and it can provide farmers with food and fish, these two kinds of nutrition that people require, people need. Therefore, we have spread this technology from the eastern part of China to the western part of China, and in Yunnan and Sichuan province, we have achieved good results. Not just that, we use the platform of South-South cooperation to spread this technology to Africa. And now I'm going to present Mr. Wang to introduce China's technology, which has been spread to Nigeria.
Chair, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you the RFC promotion project in Nigeria. First, the inception of the project. The RFC project was introduced to Nigeria through a South-South cooperation project in 2002. After extensive survey, we have come up with this project based on the following findings. First is huge demand for the fish. You know, both freshwater fish and rice are very popular food in Nigeria. In the year 2000, the average consumption of a fish is 9.7 kilo per capita versus 6.6 in China. Second is the economic reason. Nigeria has to pay with a lot of foreign exchanges to meet the domestic consumption demand for the fish. Third is a very favorable natural conditions. Nigeria boasts very large acreage for RFC. Most of their rice paddies are in swampy area, and with the very favorable climate conditions, with the temperature hovering 20 degrees all year round, so RFC is very suitable all year round. Secondly, our RFC project has gone through 4 stages. First is the pilot stage. At the Abia state, we had 6 pilot paddies covering 6,000 square meters. The paddies were irrigated with the gravity, and the fish types we cultivated were the catfish and tilapia. The demo lasted 4 months, has been very successful, and have been recognized by the project officers from both FO and the Ministry of Agriculture. They both requested us to replicate the project in Abuja. Second stage was a demonstration stage. As requested, we set up a demonstration paddy of 600 square meters in a swampy area just by the river that traverses the Iata. The fish cultivated was the catfish and the tilapia. After 6 months of demonstration, we have achieved a bumper of 20% for fish and 96% for rice. Third stage is the training stage. The Ministry of Agriculture of Nigeria and the FAO organized a training session for farmers from 8 states and ADP officials and other experts. The president of the Nigeria was represented at the opening session of the training. The fourth stage was a scale-up. With the support of FAO and the CPU, right now we have 18 states that have some demonstration projects, and in 2005, this number has been raised to 22 states, covering an acreage of 10,000 acres. Our conclusions are follows. First, it is very easy to pick up by the local farmers. They are very easy to operate and very easy to adopt by the local people, and it has proven to be a very popular and effective way to eradicate the poverty. Nigeria boasts 1.6 billion acre of swampy paddies. If we can use half of it, that will be enough to supply for provided for the fish consumption for the whole country. Second, we can achieve a better life quality for the Nigerian people by providing better nutrients. The third benefit is it saves a lot of foreign exchange for the country. The fourth is it protects the agricultural environment, and it has been very well received by the Nigerian farmers. Based on these achievements, we have scaled up these projects to other countries such as Sierra Leone, Mali, and other African countries. It has been proven to be very successful and very easy to return your investment. They are suitable for scale up to other countries who have some suitable conditions for the IFC systems, so that the benefits can be reaped by all the other countries. Thank you.
The presentation. From these three related presentations, we have seen very important progress in terms of not only scalable development solutions, but actual scaling up happening in many parts of Africa, championed by China. And it's not only China, there are other partners like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Egypt, many countries, Turkey and others participating in South-South cooperation. The age-long technology of the rice fish culture is a very important development solution that FAO can be really proud of in terms of where we have measured tangible impacts in the recent times. Without wasting much time, I would like to call upon our next presenter, Mr. Ian Flus, the Director of Policy Planning and National Relations Department, Mashav, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Israel. He will be partnering with Dr. Wokafes, a World Taxid, SHH Coordinator, the Minister of Agriculture in Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Okay, so basically I will talk about the triangular cooperation which we developed, the main objectives of the project, and the project itself, which focuses on the smallholder horticulture program in Ethiopia. And of course, what are the outcomes? So I would first of all open with how we see triangular cooperation and what are the key elements which will make this a success. And I have to say that the Israeli Development Program in the last few years basically adopted this model, and we are promoting triangular cooperation in most of our programs in other countries, moving from purely bilateral to triangular, both with other countries and also with other organizations, including the UN organizations, but also others. In this case, we're talking about a partnership between Mashab, the Israel Development Agency, bringing the technology, working with USAID, but obviously the most important partner is the Ministry of Agriculture of Ethiopia. So what are the principles? The first principle is a political interest, I would say a political will from all partners to work together. Without a political directive, usually it will not work. You need some kind of a top-down, at least indication and support, and then, of course, we have to work on the technicalities. Secondly, identifying the relevant areas for cooperation and the expertise which is needed for the specific program. Through that, we have to make sure that we create synergies between the different partners. and we basically bring the complementary strengths of each one. By this, we create a greater impact than if we work each one of us individually. The synergies and each one bringing his own unique strengths, this is a critical element, and it has to be very clear what each one of us brings to the table. Now, of course, you can ask, why to have a triangular cooperation? So first of all, we think the cooperation leverages on the comparative advantages. We have to be led by our local partners, working through local structures and through the local systems, including, of course, government and the communities. It creates more coordination among the other donor countries, and I have to say that it reduces aid fragmentation and less duplication, and it saves a lot of resources. And in this case, this is exactly what we are doing. We are creating linkages to other agencies, including in this case also with the FAO, which has cooperated with us. Mashav brings the technical expertise, the experience that we have, which is relevant in the area of agriculture, and we have something to contribute specifically with our similar climatic conditions. And we reduce cost, and as I said, we become much more efficient and maximizing the expertise of all sides. Finally, I have to say that in order for this to be successful, it has to be demand-driven with a real need coming from the ground, and we basically are working according to the local leadership and local ownership. And then going down to the program management, this is also very critical. What we have done, we have a whole coordination system, which is very short, very simple. It is efficient and is not bureaucratic. It is, we have the decision makers, the policy committee, we have the technical committee, and then we have the focal point for the implementation basically, and that's it. And then implementation of the program itself. So what is the program? The main objective is to advance Ethiopian agriculture, increase food security. The program itself is on expanding the opportunities for smallholder farmers by improving their livelihoods through, number one, commercialization of their activities, sort of from subsistence farming to commercial farming, sustainable horticulture in their approach, distributing horticulture varieties, and soon my colleague will present those. Strengthening the local knowledge, local experts for plant propagation through technical assistance to training and so on. And finally, demonstrating quality plant propagation to local commercial investors. So 10% of the program is going to the bigger or the medium-sized farmers who are not necessarily the smallholder farmers, but 90% is focusing on the smallholder farmers. I'd like to call my colleague, Dr. Vorkafes, to continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ilan and Mr. Chairman. Where is he? Yeah, which one? You cannot see. Okay.
But you can just push it.
Okay. Here on the slide, you can see the components of the program of smallholders horticulture in Ethiopia. Because of we are scarce in time, I will stop only on the first two components to explain. As you may know, Ethiopia is one of the largest countries in Africa, with 70 million hectares of land suitable for agriculture. And from this, nearly 3-4 million hectares is very much suitable for the production of horticultural crops, including root crops. Unfortunately, we have covered only 10% of this land. And besides that, the productivity and the production we are getting from this big hectarage of land is very low, comparing with other African countries, sub-Saharan African countries. Therefore, we decided to develop a number of approaches. Before that, the main reason for the low productivity, we have found that it's absence of in the country genetically improved varieties of different kinds of fruits and vegetable species. Therefore, in order to tackle this problem, we have identified 3 approaches of propagation methods. The first one was tissue culture plant propagation. Our target crops are banana and pineapple in most cases. We have also others. And we have upgraded the capacity of these, there are 6 in number, of these tissue culture laboratories to produce at least in one season 1.5 million of plants to be supplied to the smallholder farmers. The uniqueness of this very modern technology is that they are producing virus-free planting material, unlike the traditional method of propagation. The second approach we have been implementing is establishment of modern fruit nurseries with a computerized drip irrigation system, which are producing world-class plants to the farmers in terms of productivity and quality. You can see from the picture, these are some outputs of our efforts to change the situation. These are 2 nurseries and 1 colonial garden. We are using this colonial garden to fetch grafting materials to change the genetic character of the rootstocks in order to achieve better productivity and quality. The third approach is very unique. I think we cannot find such kind of technology in many countries of Africa and also in other parts of the world. We have innovated, in fact, it was innovated, to say the truth, it was innovated by the Israeli experts. His name is Dr. Avihai. He's not here with us today. And it's affordable to the farmers. As you see, first of all, it is detached from the soil. Because of this, they are not vulnerable to different kinds of soil-borne diseases. It's a big problem in vegetable production. And it's very affordable. The farmer, it costs the farmer not more than 20 USD per nursery. It is with a capacity of 2,500 seedlings per nursery. Second one is a more expanded one, or the extended one, is with a capacity of nearly 6,000 plants. Maybe it will be affordable to the medium-scale farmers. It costs nearly 200 USD per nursery. The second trait of this sector.
Excuse me, just 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you've gone. We have to stop. 1 minute. Quickly.
1 minute?
Yes, please.
Okay. The other problems we are facing is in the extension service. There is a big, rapid turnover of extension agents. This is one problem in the sector. The second is the loose or follow-up of the extension staff and advice to the farmers. Because of this, the productivity is very low. Therefore, we are trying to improve the situation by giving incentives to the extension staffs and also to organize the farmers, the model farmers, and to give very close attention and give advice in order to improve the productivity and production in that sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have listened to various development solutions. First, the the presentation by the keynote speaker on evergreen agriculture, which is very illuminating, and we give you opportunity to ask questions on that later. Also, the other aspects of high-value crops, horticultural crops, the overview of China's work in Africa and some other countries in Asia. Also, the rice fish culture, which is not only an age-long and well-tested technology, but is also spreading in parts of Africa. And also the dairy production in terms of the value chain and the opportunities for income generation. Ladies and gentlemen, I will at this point open the floor to questions and answers. Unfortunately, we don't have so much time, but we will still explore the possibilities of bringing some of the questions back to the second panel session. Okay, so.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a comment about the lecture by His Excellency, the Ambassador of the UN for Drylands. I just would like to tell that I am Dr. Edith Arian, representing ACSED from the League of Arab States. And just going back to the GAR report 2013, which ACSED has presented, a special report about drought, agriculture drought in Africa, I would like just to draw your attention that we are ready to cooperate with you, Your Excellency, for all African countries. We do have GIS maps for intensity, frequency, consecutive, and duration for all those countries, and also a combination between land degradation and drought within those countries. So we will be glad to cooperate here. Second, for the speaker about conservation agriculture, I would add my voice to his presentation and to tell that ACSED has a long experience with FAO in the region, especially for water erosion conservation, using conservation agriculture. And we would like to introduce an idea to establish a network under the FAO between different countries interested about conservation agriculture, that we can really do expansion of this important idea, especially drought is increasing in drylands and many countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to call upon Ivan Ivanisevic from the Ministry of Plenipotentiary to give a short intervention or question. Please be very brief.
I will be brief. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to give an example of what conservation agriculture can manage on the basis of our experience in Argentina. Energy savings between 30 and 50%, depending on endemic pests and GMO availability. Erosion risk reduction, 60 to 90%. You can fix soil which has a percentage of sand of 70%. It increases soil fertility through preservation and improvement of organic matter. There is an estimated 25% increase in crops potential compared to traditional tilling. Improves soil structure and water retaining capacity. It reduces water needs. It lowers production costs. It encourages increased new technology application and precision agriculture, and it promotes in-farm skills development. In the case of Argentina, we have extended the frontier of agricultural land, thanks to conservation agriculture, into semi-arid areas, without, in many cases, without irrigation. So this is what I think what we can expect of agricultural conservation, and we have to bear in mind that agriculture is the main employer in developing countries. So it is a crucial issue which needs to be addressed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Gil Haskell. I'm the Israeli ambassador here in Kenya. A very interesting combination of panelists. I'm curious to know, and I would like to pose this question to our presenters from China what kind of measures they take in order to assure sustainability of the projects after the Chinese experts phase out from the training. Thank you.
The Chinese government has taken a lot of measures to ensure the sustainability of South-South cooperation projects. In particular, when we are sending our experts and technicians to other developing countries to provide technical advisory services, the Chinese government conducted extensive trainings, including on language and overall adaptability and skills, to ensure that they have the maximum interaction with the locals to help them to improve their productivity and their income.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think to add to that response, the countries on their own also have responsibilities. For instance, in the case of Nigeria, where about maybe 700 Chinese experts have been fielded to the 36 states in the country, the government has ensured sustainability and continuity of this program by establishing what is called REMSEC, regional extension or hubs in each of the states, where the counterparts, the local counterparts, take the technologies and adapt them and assimilate to be able to ensure continuity. Thank you very much. One more question, and I'd like to give to that side. Yes, there. No, there. Okay, yes, there.
Thank you very much. This is George Mngao Okonji from Kenya. My question goes to the Afghanistan man. Given your fragile security system in your country coupled with the unpredictable weather pattern, what measures have you put in place to include camel milk in your dairy setup? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. According to your question, I have to tell you Afghanistan has different area. In all the countries, not a security problem. According our experience, we were at the beginning a security problem when we established dairy development scheme by the support of FAO and the Ministry of Agriculture of Afghanistan. It reduced insecurity problems because people could to find legal income. For your more information, there is no more security problem in the targeted area, and also there is no cultivation of poppy also.
Thank you very much. Finally, I would like to ask the keynote speaker to respond to the intervention regarding his presentation.
Thank you. And the gentleman from the League of Arab Nations, Arab States, had suggested a follow-up on the developments of agricultural drought and mapping of drylands in support of this program, and I welcome that very, very much. Look forward to speaking with you directly after the session so we can actually make that connection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thank all the panelists and ladies and gentlemen for your patience and cooperation during this session. I now want to hand over to my colleague, Sheikh Surang, for the second session. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Encouraging to see we still have full house at this time of the day. So this is why we have, I believe you were well inspired to have a different formula for the second part of this event. But you will see there's full continuity. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask, we're not going to have PowerPoints, we're going just to do that second session in the form of question and answers, talk show. So while I ask the presenters and panelists for that second segment to come and sit on this stage, I would also ask those of you who are there, please stay with us, but what I suggest is you just stand up, maybe stretch for half an hour, half an hour is what we have. For half a minute, okay? It won't do harm to you, you can just stand up and just for a sort of a health. We don't have energizers here. If there is anybody who have an exercise to propose, come while people are sitting. I see this lady was very proactive the other day during the leadership forum. Why don't you come here? I give you 10 seconds to give us an energizer, please. Okay, put on your shoes. Everybody else, you can take off your shoes.
What do you want me to?
Okay, you have 10 seconds to tell us what to do for blood circulation and all of this. While we sit and while we, okay? Just tell them what to do. You want to, maybe I can sit somewhere here?
Excellent. Oh.
Thank you very much. Hope you feel better, but please don't go away. We're missing somebody. Dominic? Please. As you can see, we have all of us here, we used to pushing papers. This is the only guy who works he's a mechanic. You'll see what he does. He's an inventor. Please join us. So he gets lost in this kind of environment. Do you want us to start with you or later, by the time you get familiar with all these eyes on you? Yeah? Later? You don't mind? Okay, good. All right, so what you have here around this table is very much, this is a panel that is going to be a focus on examples of South-South cooperation or activities that are now subject to South-South and potentially sort of expandable through South-South. And we have a diversity of approaches that we want to present to you. We have 4 solutions. And we have also 3 people who have no solutions, but they would want to comment on solutions presented. And you will see, just sort of to break the ice for you, audience, and we'll sure we make time for discussion and interaction with you. So without further ado, if this is ready, do we have the Dominic pictures? So what we're going to show you is about in the spirit of this this forum, is what is referred to as a biogas digester, which probably many of you have heard about. But the specificity about this one is that it's a portable biogas digester. Not something you can put in your bag, but it's a bag that you can carry with you in your car. You can take it, you can use it at home or take it to the field, etc. Very simple idea, and Dominic is going to explain to us. So the way we organize this is very simple. I'm going to ask sort of 3 sets of questions. We want to understand where we started. We want to understand where we are now. And the next question is where we want to be with each of these solutions. This question will revolve around those sort of sets of questions. Dominic, can you briefly tell us what was the idea behind, what was the problem that we were trying to solve, and what you have done with it?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dominic. I basically design solutions for rural development, rural areas. I was presented with a challenge for a particular tribe in Kenya who are becoming very sedentary, the Maasai tribe. And they basically were cutting down the forest behind the Nairobi National Park. To this end, basically, because they're becoming sedentary, their cows are no longer migrating, so they needed more grazing space. So by clearing the trees and selling it as charcoal, they thought that they were going to create more land, when in fact they were just causing more destruction. And because of the presence of all the cows, there was a lot of cow poop. So there was a lot of eye diseases and what have you to the kids. So I was asked to come up with a solution. So I proposed a portable biogas system, or a very inexpensive biogas system, that we ran trials for about a year and a half, and they were very successful. Through that, we basically tweaked it from being a very simple system for the Maasai to now becoming quite a big thing that basically is solving lots of problems. But basically, the idea is to solve it started off by trying to solve the Maasai problem. It ended up it became now a forest conservation effort and a woman problem because of the smoke inhalation. It's basically the cleanest form of renewable energy, of cooking fuel.
So what did you do? What is it? How does it work?
Basically, the difference is it's sitting above the ground, as you can see in the picture. There's not this pipe goes into the ground and then back up and into the base of the system. So there's no construction needed. There's no stones, there's no cement, there's no fundis. So it's basically lays flat on the surface. When folded up, it literally is as small as a backpack. You see, these are them when they're folded. Those are 5 systems, not one system. So, and you can transport them on the back of a motor or a border motorcycle to basically anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world, actually, because they're so light. They take about 2 hours to install. You load them with dung, and within 3 days, 5 days, or 7 days, sort of at the maximum, you're cooking. So the greenhouse that is covering them enhances the temperature. So the actual fermentation process is extremely rapid. So you're going to get far more gas than what's ever been needed before at a domestic level. So before, biogas was designed in conventional biogas systems to solve the domestic cooking problem. It was a replacement for cooking fuel and a clean cook stove. Our system, because of its efficiency, we're now running generators, we're running brooders, we're running hot water systems. You can actually run a micro business off a very, very small, inexpensive
How many
unit.
do you have in place and where?
We've got them all over Kenya. We've got about 300 or 400 in Kenya. We've got the ones in Rwanda that we piloted with IFAD in an area called Kirehe. We've got 3 in India that were also piloted to test the proof of concept. They're working extremely well. In fact, the professor at the IIT, the Institute of India Technology, has actually recommended them to other programs within India and is asking us now whether we need partners in that country to scale up because they are so successful there. We've got one in Brazil, we've got one in Nigeria, we're in Tanzania and Uganda. Yeah.
Good. Where do you want to be in 5-10 years? Where do you see this going? That's my last question to you.
I see the technology literally going viral very, very quickly. Now that people are getting used to it. It's taken a while to get people used to the idea of biogas. Locally, biogas is associated with cows. If you need to have cows and you need to have a huge amount of money to build a biogas digester, and you need to own the land, because you can't, conventionally you would never build on, you couldn't build on someone else's property. With this system now, because it's lightweight, because it is portable in that you can rent a land, use it, and then when you move, you roll it up and take it with. On top of that, a big advantage is that because it is so efficient, or let's say the smaller ones are very, very cheap, which means that you can purchase a small one. As your family grows, you can sell off the small one and purchase a larger one. Conventional systems have got a ceiling. They will not increase the volume of gas no matter how much you feed them. So this has got that huge advantage. So we see it going literally going global all over the place.
Any constraints with it?
Sorry?
Any constraints with it? Materials, costs, or?
Yeah, but we're at the scale-up level where we need now to take that big step, where we need, that capital investment to now stock the hardware stores, stock the agro-vets, get into the government programs, get into the big, hence, that's why we're here, is to get into other programs that are South-South development based. Because this technology can be transferred across borders very, very easily. So we're looking for support from other organizations and people here.
Okay. Let's leave it at that, Dominic. This is very interesting. I think let's take it as an appetizer.
Thank you.
And this is very interesting. This is a case President Parker was saying yesterday that solution shouldn't always come from the north. So this is an indigenous solution. The other element that is interesting here is that we started in Kenya, then moving to Rwanda, but then then he jumped to India, and Indians are recommending, and then from there, Brazil. You haven't mentioned it, but I know that in some of our projects in Bangladesh and Mali, etc., we're also talking about it. But it's not only solution, there are also some challenges, probably will come later. From Kenya, I'd like to move to Central Europe, where we are talking about a topic also linked to this. It's about conservation agriculture. And I would like to ask Karim Sma, who's our regional economist for the Middle East, North Africa. He covers also Central Asia, but before that he's been responsible for our country programs in part of Central Europe. So what I would like to ask him is, what is it all about? We've heard about conservation agriculture just before. Is it the same thing? Is it different? What's different about it?
Thank you. The case we're going to present is from a country in Central Europe, Moldova, which was part of the former Soviet Union. Historically, that part of the world was not considered to be in the south. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the distribution of the land, the structure of the farming in those countries have changed, and there was an acute need for them to also engage into agriculture in a different way. I'm representing a region which is straddling three continents, one of the IFAD regions, Near East, North Africa, and Central Europe, and Central Asia, actually, which is also part of our remit. That region represents an investment of about $1 million, which is IFAD resources, on top of which we leverage co-financing of about $1.6 million. That's the current size of our portfolio. I would like just to show that this operating model, based on concessional fines provided by IFAD, is also an excellent platform for South-South cooperation. What we did in that case is that the exposure to the Moldovan to climate vagaries has been increasing tremendously as a consequence of the climate change. And the government of that country has asked IFAD to look into ways about shifting from the conventional agriculture into conservation agriculture. I'm not going to dwell on the merits of conservation agriculture. I think the panel before has explained all the benefits accruing when you shift from conventional to conservation agriculture. But the idea was how we can use the IFAD operating model, look elsewhere, and we look into a country from the south, Sudan, where we worked on natural resource management and specifically on conservation agriculture. And we use a tool which is a knowledge management network we call CarriaNet, which is supported by a grant through IFAD, so we can allow the Moldovan to get exposure to the experience in Sudan, and to also look in ways how they can really learn, but also adapt their solution into the context of Central Europe, which is quite different. But the idea was, so we started from a problem identified by the government, we looked into our portfolio, and we found the solution elsewhere, and we used it an ad hoc instrument which was not dedicated to South-South cooperation. It was dedicated to knowledge management and knowledge sharing, but we used it and we ended up supporting conservation agriculture. This is where we were, where we started.
Can you then tell us where we are now? How much has been done?
So where we are, right now we are seeing a significant shift in that country towards conservation agriculture. The base is limited, but there is a 100 increase in the number of farmers who shifted to conservation agriculture. We've trained 600 farmers in a 1 year time span, and we've ended up with 1/3 of those farmers shifting to conservation agriculture, and that was supported through the IFAD program. It's about 70 million program in that country, and through matching grants for them to purchase or to lease equipment. Because when you shift from from conventional to conservation, you need also to adapt and buy seeders, and you buy specific tractors in order to adapt. So that was addressed through the country program. Now, recently we've scaled up the involvement of IFAD, and we moved it from $1 million to $5 million, thanks to the partnership we had with the GEF, and specifically with the Special Climate Change Fund. And we're looking about allowing 2,000 farmers to shift to conservation agriculture. So this is what we're aiming at.
Can you tell us, Karim, where you see that program 5 years, 10 years from now, and what are the barriers standing in the way?
Based on the results we're having right now, I think it's realistic to see that probably up to 15% of the farmland could be converted into conservation agriculture in that country. The fact that there is a natural resource management element in that, but also there is profitability, and the farmers really save significant amounts on fuel, and there is more labor profitability in that country, and people are seeing that it works, and it really worth the money and worth the effort spent into it. So I think it is realistic to think that this shift would be significant and would be something that would allow us also to move from that country to other countries in the sub-region of Central Europe and Central Asia. And that's the beauty of it, because we are really covering a wide area, and we can step back and see the big picture and see what it works and how we can adapt it and scale it up and replicate it in different contexts.
Thank you very much, Karim. I would like, in the interest of time, to move on to another topic. As you've seen here, it's a very interesting illustration of how a $1 million program is pursued through a much bigger $1 million pilot being pursued through a much bigger program linked to IFAD intervention. And I think that provides an interesting lead from the previous presentation that was support and the example of the collaboration between Ethiopia and Israel, I think. Okay, these are techniques, technologies, practices, etc. But then the question is, how will these innovations travel? How do you do that? Now, part of the approaches we adopt is to provide support for that to happen. And this is why next on my list is Maya Peltola, who's from Procasur, which is started as an IFAD program. Maya will tell you about it. And as an example, as an illustration of ways in which innovation can travel and expand and so on. Maya, can you tell us quickly about Procasur, where it started, why, and what was done?
Thank you, Sheikh, and thank you. I feel very glad to be able to contribute also to the gender balance and to the intergenerational balance of this session. Yeah, thank you.
The energizer was a lady, I remember that, at least trying to catch up.
Yes, Procasur started some 20 years ago already, when within some IFAD project in Southern America, in South America, mainly in Peru, also in Argentina, people working there realized that the traditional way of doing extension services, very top-down, coming from the capital, coming from research centers, universities, and telling the campesinos, the farmers, how to do stuff wasn't the right one. And there was a much more efficient way and a much more cost-efficient way also to do extension services, and this was with a bottom-up approach. So what Procasur has been doing now for 18 years, more or less, is bringing those who know, really the practitioners together. So it started mainly as a peer-to-peer learning exchanges. We have facilitated campesino to campesino, farmers to farmer exchanges, and both physical exchanges and also nowadays in some virtual modes. And we're now catering also more and more to policymakers. So this is something that that Procasur has, as a demand-driven organization. We're getting more and more requests. But really, the underpinning philosophy of Procasur is how do we do rural development and development as such in a very cost-efficient way with a bottom-up approach.
Can you tell us what has been done, where we are now with different type of interventions in which countries and so on?
Well, nowadays Procasur has globalized. So since 2006 we have implemented more than 100 so-called learning routes, which are like very structured learning cycle or study tours, but which have a very good methodology embedded in. And we have done these in more than 30 countries in 4 continents. So Europe, Latin America, and the Caribbean, Asia and the Pacific, and Africa. And after being more or less for 15 years more so a very Latin American organization, we have now a regional office also in Nairobi, which caters to East and Southern Africa, and then we have another office in Thailand, which caters to the Asia and Pacific region.
Where do you see yourself in 5-10 years, and what are the challenges?
I think the challenges lie in that there are still some places and some organizations and some institutions which still rely on the very top-down approach. So in extension services and in knowledge management and in development as such. So I think here we can really sensitize people, and I also invite all of you to visit our webpage and maybe also to participate in some of our learning routes. Procasur has, the learning route methodology especially has proved to be a very, very good tool for scaling up. So we have very good examples, for example, between Cambodia and Thailand, where we have been able to contribute to scaling up of community learning centers. We have also a very good example, Johannes, you know very much about how the public resources allocation mechanism, which was first launched in Peru, was then scaled up and made up part of public policy in Vietnam. This has been a very, very interesting scaling up process also. But mainly, yeah, the challenges lie in the sensitizing people on this approach and getting the word forward.
Thank you very much, Maya. This is yet another entry points to the kind of support that could be provided to South-South. It all started as a component of an IFAD-funded program in Peru, and that component, Procasur, means Programa de Capacitación del Sur, and then it progressively institutionalized into a totally independent body, but of course they continue to collaborate with us and others. Thanks, Maya, for reminding us about the other half of the village. We'll make sure that when we open up for Q&A that we hear more from the ladies. Festus, we have to do better next time in gender. Yeah.
Thank you, Chef.
What I would like to do now is to give you another example before we hear from our discussants and yourself. One last example of solution. This one is not about a particular technology. It is not about a particular system, but it is a project. It's a project, a collaborative arrangement between IFAD and China as a country interested in South-South collaboration. You've heard about it later, and this is going to tell you how we've done it, how they have done it with us, and how we relate to other countries. But in order to do that, I'm going to ask a few questions to Luke, who has joined us from Beijing. He's in our country office in Beijing. But first, what I would like to ask him is basically tell us a little bit about sort of what has happened. How come China so many years ago was behind, lagging behind Africa and all of, in terms of poverty incidence, and now they are way ahead. What happened? What is it?
Thank you very much, Sheikh, for this very precious opportunity. And actually, I'm from IFAD China office located in Beijing. As Sheikh has mentioned, I mean, China, if you can show the next slide, please. And also the next one. I would like to show you a figure. And in this figure, you can see, maybe I can stand up, it's easier to point out. Back in the 1980s, that is 1981, China is actually poor in terms of the incidence of poverty than the sub-Saharan countries and most of the developing world. And you can see also a steep reduction trend from 1981 to 1987, when China is similarly poor than the sub-Saharan countries. Then this reduction trend continues all the way down until now. And now China is slightly better off than sub-Saharan countries and also the developing world. We from IFAD, located in China, which is one of the biggest developing countries in the world, we would like to think over like what happened behind this scene and how much IFAD as a multilateral organization can promote the sharing and the scaling up of these experiences to the developing world.
In other words, if you look at this 1981, and then 1987, you see the sharp discrete in the full blue line, that's the China one. The dotted one is the rest of the world, and the rest, the other one is sub-Saharan Africa. Now, the numbers you see to your left is incidence of poverty. For example, in 81, we have 90%, of the population were living under international poverty line in 91, in 81. But then in 87, it was only 60%. If you look at the blue line, but already, sharply declining, and getting to comparable number with sub-Saharan Africa. What happened?
Yeah, what happened? Could you go to the next slide? This slide shows 4 key important cases from late 1970s all the way to 2010. The 4 key phases where China has gone through in its poverty reduction journey. In it, it includes a lot of models of interventions at both policy and technical levels. I won't go much in detail, but if you can click another one. I would like you to maybe take a second at this one, this household responsibility system, which we often refer as HRS. This one is in China is often called as the trigger of the open up and reform policy that leads to what happened shown in the previous figure. What happened? In the 1950s and 60s, China is following a collective agricultural approach where there are different communes in this country that cover thousands or 25,000 of households in one commune. This approach is very effective in mobilizing resources and labor in the 1950s when the country faces a war-torn economy. However, gradually, it shows another side, which is a little bit dampen the production incentives of the farmers. So in 1987, in a village, in one small village in China, several farmers, in order to have a full stomach, secretively designed this mode, which is to contract the communal land to village households. And what happened? As a result, they not only filled their stomach very well, and also the government officers began to notice the substantial increase of agricultural production in a year. The Chinese government is at that time very accommodating to the spontaneous, local grass-level innovation. Even though at that time this practice is a little bit illegal, they didn't kill it in cradle. Rather, they began to study it and report it to the national government. The national government further identified as an effective approach. So what happened? In 1987, this is what took place. And 5 years later, the HRI scheme has been spread whole out of China. More than 90% of the whole Chinese arable land is performing this approach. And this approach has effectively increased agricultural production efficiency, released the labor, which has become the base for the subsequent labor-intensive production and labor-intensive industry that is the engine for the late growth of China in the late 1990s and 21st century. So this system is really the trigger of what happened.
Thank you, Luca. Now, of course, but this is China, okay?
Yes.
We are not in Kenya.
Well, yeah.
So what's in it for? Is this anything in there that is of interest to Africa?
Well, this is a very good question. It's something that I've always been thinking to myself. With my colleagues from the Ministry of Agriculture, I'm a little bit afraid of maybe saying something different. Well, I think in terms of sharing, it's a contextual issue. You cannot copy one success and replicate it as actually what it is, because you will be faced with the risk that the success will become a failure in another country, another context. So maybe some general thinkings. Could you go to the next slide? These are maybe some general models we reflected. Well, we together with the partners in China reflected. One, the development of China is following an ownership approach, which means the Chinese people are at the driving seat. In China, we have a proverb which is very famous. It's saying, if you want to travel a 1,000 journey, granted you are ambitious. Nevertheless, you need to make the first step on your own feet. If development is a 1,000-mile journey, then the countries themselves must be the driver. So are the developing countries. We cannot rely on others. Development is a task that has to be shouldered by ourselves. In China, this implicates we have a 5-year socioeconomic plan where the specific economic targets are stipulated. In the formation of this plan, the government will consolidate proposals and requests from different provinces, different ministries for development. And then a government focal point. On many occasions, it could be a Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Commerce or Ministry of Agriculture who bring these consolidated proposals to the donors. It's like a menu. Then the donors will pick up based on their request or their comparative advantage. It's not vice versa. It's not the government will pursue the donors to do whatever they want. That's not what is taking place in my country. As our reform designer, Mr. Deng Xiaoping, used to say, China will develop in any case with or without external help. Nevertheless, we cherish and value the external help because it will provide what we need. So in principle, it's adapt expertise of others to your own objective. Maybe this is the principle, number one principle. Number two principle is to select a route based on the comparative advantage of your own country. For instance, China is a big country. Its sheer feature is we are raising more than 20% of the world's population with less than 10% of world's land. So food security is the utmost important issue in the agenda of the Chinese government thousands of years. So when the reform begins, it starts from agriculture, then comes to industry, then comes to service business. It follows a right route. When the farmers get their stomach filled, they have more thoughts and they have more time to think about and to travel to cities and look for jobs, and they have the base to increase their skills. Then the reform is getting success. Also in China, no reforms can be successful without well tackling the agriculture sector. Also now, when the reform is faced with new challenges, such as imbalanced development between different regions, income disparities and inequality, we began to come back to agriculture again, where we have phased out agriculture tax and given different kinds of agriculture subsidies. So the lesson for developing country is, first think about your comparative advantage, what you have. In Chinese, we have a famous game named Mahjiang. Maybe you know. It's like poker. In order to win, you have to know the cards at your own hand before you figure out what others will play. So this is the principle number 2. And principle number 3 is learning. Learning, incremental, and scaling up. I used to be a part of the Chinese government, and the Minister of Commerce used to say, China is developing well simply because China is a serious student. So what we learn? First, we learn from ourselves. The HRS example I showed you just now, it is a good example where the officials, the policymakers at a higher end, they take notice on what happened at a grassroots level. They did not ignore it as what it is. Second, learning from mistakes. China, the development of China is also filled with mistakes. To be human is to err. Like for instance, in the 1950s, we pursue the heavy industrial development. At that time, we see development as only the establishment of iron, steel factories or heavy industries, and we kind of oppressed the development of agriculture. So what happened? A big famine in the late 1950s and early 1960s. So this alert all the Chinese people, we began to learn from the mistake that we have to take agriculture at the most important position, quote unquote. The last one is everything is a reiterate route. I mean, development is a noble cause. However, it is also affiliated with uncertainties and challenges. You cannot expect development is always linear like a highway. You will be sidetracked. And at that time, don't be disappointed. In Chinese, we have a word named 危机. Challenges in Chinese challenges translated into Chinese is called 危机, which is composed of two words, opportunity and risks. So sometimes when you are trapped by a risk, maybe it is the time you can learn the best.
Thank you very much, Lucia. What I would suggest is that there is more to this, of course, but it was just an appetizer. What I suggest is if you want to see what's coming next, you'll have to join us on Thursday lunchtime. It's not over yet. I'm just saying we will stop it at that on China and move on, so we make sure we give you time and we give time to our colleagues to talk. But it's a very interesting example, you know, from a country experience. What's common in there is a notion of ownership, the notion of sequencing is there, the notion of learning is there, and the notion of iteration, an iterative process. And I think these are probably universal lessons that would be worth sleeping over. What I would like to do now at this stage is to ask three of our panelists here, our three panelists here, who have, I said earlier, they have no solution, but they have experience, okay? So we have Steve Tomlow is the regional climate change specialist of working with us, IFAD, but he's based here in Kenya. Before that, of course, he has extensive experience in UNEP and so on. So what I would like to, you know, starting with him, is to ask him to give us quickly his take from a mindset of climate change adaptation. Okay, you've heard about biogas, you've heard about agriculture and the China story. What's your take on this?
Okay, thanks, Sheikh. What I would like to do is ask for the last slide to go up and remain there, because I think it's probably one of the most pertinent slides that we've seen today, and that's no reflection on the other very, very good presentations. But there are key points there that we need to take on board, be it adapting to climate change or just doing good, solid development and research work, because they're very key points. And what I'd like to go back, and I'm perhaps not going to go as much into the climate change as you'd like me to do, but be more generic, as I'm first, and it means that I can steal the thunder from my two colleagues on a couple of the things. I think some of the key lessons we learned is the need to create development space. And we've heard many different examples of those. And one of the ways of actually creating the development space is to rethink the command and control structure that often governs agriculture and rural development in the countries that we work in. If we can actually change that command and control structure, we can start to give people security of tenure. If they have security of tenure, they're better prepared to actually make investments that can actually help them meet their day-to-day livelihood aspirations, but also be in a situation to actually cope with the risks that climate variability and climate change will bring towards them. So first of all is the command and control. But one thing that I haven't heard a great deal about is the role of the private sector in all of this work and how it underpins it. And from that point of view, we have to think about inputs. We had a mention from our colleagues from Argentina about the need to access the latest technologies, be it biotechnology, be it the example we saw with regards to using tissue culture. We need to actually harness some of the latest inputs. We also need to understand how we can actually improve the input markets and get some of the private sector to be willing to take risks and recognise that there is a market in the smallholder sector of Africa and other parts of the world that they can exploit. Then it comes access to equipment. Too often we get involved in doing equipment, and everybody talks to me about conservation agriculture. In another life, I was heavily involved in pushing conservation agriculture in southern Africa. And one of the first things I learned from the private sector is, you researchers, you developers, you do great jobs, you get all these ideas together, you develop these new tools. The simplest analogy they could give us was that you invite us to a meal, you've actually discussed the menu, you cook the food, but then you want the private sector to pay for the meal, and you can't understand why there's a reluctance. Because too often some of our solutions as scientists, as development specialists, don't take on board the risk that the private sector has to take on board and the margins they require to make a profit and stay in business. These are challenges that Dominic's facing at the moment, and the need for some form of really good business management to help him really move to the next steps of scaling out the biogas. Then finance. And finance is a very interesting world. None of us really understand, well, from my perspective, I'm still trying to understand the risk and the attitudes that financiers take when they're looking at developing credit schemes and insurance schemes. At the moment, my understanding of the risks and the heterogeneity the smallholder farmers face do not mesh with what the financiers want and the risks they're prepared to take. And that could be in normal development, or as we see climate change coming on board and people try and push more and more insurance. And then lastly, markets. Too often we don't take on board and really try and understand the markets. And within all of that, our points on the board come back that we need to learn at each of these sections, and the learning never stops. We need to do reflective learning, and unfortunately in many of the countries that we work, some of the command and control structures don't allow that reflective learning and the movement to take place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. I take it that the previous round of applause applied to the previous four presenters and whoever is going to speak after this. What I would like to do, maybe if you don't mind, if we would move from sort of the thematic take to, you would like to come in now?
Can I come? Because
yes, please. Okay, good.
My
it's
point
fresh on your mind.
picks up exactly on the last point.
All right.
So I apologize.
Okay. Johannes Lin is a former vice president of the World Bank. He's worked at Brookings Institute. He continues to work with them. He's senior advisor at IFAD. He does lots of things. Anyway, one of which is he's one of a staunch champion of scaling up agenda, and so you'll hear more about this also on Thursday. So Johannes is with us, and we're asking him to give us his take on what he's heard.
No, thanks, Shay. Apologies that I'm forcing myself in, but it's because exactly this point about learning and scaling up is the point I want to raise, and I think it follows nicely also with this slide up. My question really to all, also early this afternoon, by the way, the presentations were all really exciting, and I think it's just wonderful that we heard from you all. The innovation and the transfer mechanisms that you have put in place and so on is just terrific. The scaling up that's happened in some cases too. But I'm really interested in what lessons do you draw in terms of monitoring, evaluation, and learning. There were a few cases where we heard, Professor Garrity, you talked about your monitoring by aerial photography and so on. Well, without that monitoring, could you have in fact achieved the impact across exactly? So then we had, of course, in the Chinese case, it's if you wish, the epitome of learning, piloting, but then not just pilots to nowhere, You pilot a whole bunch of things and then you systematically, maybe not with new tools of impact evaluation, but you've systematically taken stock of the learning and then you've put a lot of resources, a lot of rewards, incentives to those that actually had shown potential to success. So the learning was absolutely critical. In the other cases, there was only one case, I think it was the Vietnam-Namibia case, that stressed the intense M&E and then midterm review and so on. I would have loved from everybody else to hear more. Now we don't have time for that. So I would just flag that to everyone in the room that if we do not take this seriously, my sense is that South-South cooperation, just like North-South cooperation, will in fact have a lot of failures that are just because of the neglect of learning. We know from all the evaluations that have been taking place of North-South cooperation that monitoring evaluation are the habitually weakest elements in the projects and programs that you guys support, whether it's IFAD, whether it's my alma mater, World Bank, all of them. If you look at the evaluations, monitoring evaluation sucks, quite frankly. And this is not, that's why we don't have significant impact ultimately, because we're not learning. We're not learning from our successes, and importantly, we're not learning from our failures. So I'm just flagging that if we don't get the monitoring, evaluation, and learning right, and it has to be very much related to the scaling up, to the iterative route that China has stressed. If we don't get that right, we're not going to get South-South cooperation right either. And so I'm just putting that on the table for consideration, and now I'm handing off.
Yeah. Thank you very much. You can keep that, Johannes, just in case. What I would like to do before we hand over to you is to come, last but not least, to give you now a comment from a person who represents IFAD at country level in Ethiopia, but he served also in Kenya before. That's Robson Mutandi. He's our country director now in Ethiopia. It's very important to have the country perspective because that's where the rubber hits the road. So what I would like to ask Robson is to give us his take on this. What's the meaning of all of this at country level in terms of our country program and so on?
Thanks, Sheikh. One crime you don't do to potential politicians is to limit their time. And I'm one of those potential politicians. But I'll stick to this very short time thing. Here is the challenge, and I'll pick up from what Johannes and my friend Steve has raised, and come back to you. What are we scaling up? And why are we scaling up? And for us to be able to answer those questions, I'm sorry I have to come back to Johannes' thing. Without credible data to drive this thinking, without credible information, without credible evidence that these things do work, we will be scaling up in a vacuum. We are scaling up what I call political speeches. And so I'm just coming back to this issue of the need for us to have robust data, the need for us to have robust evidence. Because a few years down the line, our children will be asking us, why did you do this mess? Why were you pushed? Why did you spend so much money to carry on into the blind end of a tunnel? Because as I think we know, these things have been done in a different model and they haven't taken us very far. And for Africa, and for where I come from, that is where I'm working now, there are a few things that I'd like to share with you. One is that what helps us in the Ethiopian context, and I think Dr. Wolke will agree with me, in the Ethiopian context is that we have the enabled political framework. You need the political framework to be able to do these scales. Whether the type of politics is something else. I'm not talking about whether this is a democratic system or not. You need a system that allows you to do certain things. Argue again, separate forums about whether you need this type of governance and that type of governance. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the environment for you to be able to do the scaling up that we're talking about. Now, in the Ethiopian context, we have that framework. And I have had conversation both with the late Prime Minister and the current Prime Minister. And they say, look, IFAD is a relatively small player. what can you do to help us? And here is what drives us. Small is beautiful, but bigger is better. Yeah? I'm not talking about this in a sexist context. Small is beautiful, bigger the better. And so, you need partners. IFAD and FAO and everyone else will bring up these innovative ideas, nice things from Moldova, nice things from China, nice things from Vietnam. We don't have enough resources, we don't have the billions to drive this agenda. So you need partners. And where are these partners? They are in the bilaterals, they are in the IFIs, but more so, they are in the private sector. And I think, come back to Steve's point. And how do we draw this private sector into what we are doing? We have a model that we are developing. Unfortunately, it will take us a bit of time in South Sudan, which is a new nation. It's 2 years old. It's a new baby. Open government. They say, Robson can help us. We want to jump and catch up with the rest of the world. So how do we jump? So we're designing a strategy there which is based on hooking in serious private sector investments from the serious private sector companies, US, Israelis, Kenyan, African, European, and stuff like that. And the IFAD element is to drive this process to attract this investment into scaling up things that work. Now, where are the products that we are scaling up? They may not necessarily be in South Sudan. They are in Uganda. They are in Kenya. We have financial products from this country. I work here for more than 6 years. I know the products are here. They are in Afghanistan, they are in India. We have developed programs based on South-South cooperation with the Indian giants on rural finance in Ethiopia. And we have a model that has worked. We brought in a retired NABARD chief executive to design policy frameworks for the microfinance industry. And out of that, 9 proclamations went through Parliament from 1 working paper. These are the kind of things that we are talking about. So we have these things. Now we're developing again based on the experience that we have been which has been brought to us, that there is more evidence that the Asians have done this community-driven development more effectively than anyone else. And for us to keep on struggling and say we look to the African context, we look to the African experience, it's not taking us very far. So we look into the Asian model and say, what can Asia bring into this? But we need money to attract these guys to come. There are language barriers. We heard about the Vietnamese, Namibian context. So we need to break those barriers. But let me jump to the last point that I want us to take home and probably discuss. When you are doing these things, there is a serious element of risk. You are taking risks. You are playing with other people's money. I'm playing with IFAD's money. I'm risking IFAD resources. And I do it deliberately. And I've said, if they fire me, I haven't stolen this money. But I'm risking it. Now, let me tell you a story. I've worked in the private sector in a company. And one of my colleagues, very innovative young man, who were working in a laboratory, decided to experiment on rubber technology. We were under serious concern. And he experimented with this product outside the framework of the management. And management did not know that he was doing these things. And then the fire broke out at midnight and burnt the whole laboratory down. Poor young man comes the following morning, he's shivering, and he could not even pronounce his name, and says to our manager, please, I have 5 children, 2 wives, and if you fire me, I am in trouble. And the general manager says, what did you do? Just tell me why you did what you did. And he said, no, I wanted to experiment on a new product. And unfortunately, the new product resulted in a fire. And you know what happened? The general manager said, okay, don't tell me about your 5 children and 2 wives. You are being promoted simply because you are an innovative person. I want you to continue to think outside the box. Don't think along the lines of a job description that my job description says ABCD. Think outside the box. So you are now the head of the laboratory. We are rebuilding the laboratory for you.
Thank you very much. I've been working with Robson for many, many years. I didn't know about his political talents. We learned also about the illegal China farmers' approach to land management, as well as the illegal young men's approach to laboratory management. Thanks, well done. What I would like to do is, without transition, just to hand over the floor to the floor and take a few questions. We'll just do it on a first come, first serve basis. And we'll move from this side to that side, and then we'll try to be balanced. I see a hand here, and so please just an appeal to you not to tell a story. Just ask your question or make a quick and short, remark and suggestion, something that you'd like us maybe to follow up on Thursday and so on. Okay? Please. Tell us who you are and yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Alphonse Molo. I'm from AMIS Africa. I'm Kenyan. And there's a lot that I've learned from the person who talked on behalf of the Chinese on how they moved forward. It was so impressive and insightful. And he said one thing that I won't forget, that we have to look into ourselves, what do we have? And in Africa, one of the things that we boast about is a big population of the young people who apparently are jobless. And this is a situation where we're talking of food security, technology transfer, and innovation sharing platform. And the young people are well equipped in such a way that they can have a platform to do this all together. So my greatest concern is, can we have a situation where, as a panelist or one of the way forward, where young people are going to be more involved in terms of designing this project, execution, and carrying them out, innovation to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's take two more. Okay, I see a lady behind. Let's say the two ladies and the gentleman, if you don't mind. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, that's just the two ladies. Quick from two ladies, please.
My name is Rosemary McCarthy, and I'm representing Aspen Global, Kenya. I just wanted to find out whether it is possible to get the presentation from China, because it's been a really eye-opener. And what I found out was that you really don't have to wait for someone to give you funding to start something. You can do it without outside help. You can get outside help, but you have to keep moving.
Okay, yes, you'll get it, but you'll come back on Thursday. Madam?
Okay, I'm Agnes Odongo from Kenya Electricity Generating Company. My question is, I don't know whether it is a question or a comment. China has moved so fast from 90% of poverty to 10 within a very short time. But in most cases, people just talk about successes. They don't talk about failures. And then these documents, they are not shared. So other countries that are going into these activities, they can't learn that China moved that fast, for an example, and then they had so many failures, they learned so many lessons, and their successes were this, so that they can use the same, so that they don't repeat the failures, but they look at them and decide based on their status, so that they don't repeat, because people learn from mistakes.
Thank you very much.
And in most cases, people are only celebrating about success. And the gentleman from Ethiopia said that when something goes wrong and you are innovative, then you are chased from job. So people are not encouraged to innovate because of such things.
Thanks. We'll see if we can answer those later. Gentlemen, please quickly, because then we'll move to this part and then...
Okay, I'll be very quick. My name's Robert Ouma. I work for an IFAD initiative to improve market access in Southern Africa. And so I was very excited to hear one of the panelists, I think it was Steve, highlight market access, which in some ways has been seen by a number of projects historically as an almost intractable problem, where previous interventions fell short because of how the market access was done and what was done. So within the project, which we call NEMAS, we are trying to pilot certain solutions which use local talent, local BDS providers to try and increase wealth that gets to the smallholder farmers in a sustainable way. And we will very much appreciate to talk about this. So in fact, IFAD has already seen this and is trying to work out a solution in this area, which is really a positive thing. So hopefully on Thursday we get a chance to discuss more our ideas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I move on to this part. A gentleman here, and then I see, yeah.
Thank you. Just to make a suggestion, the interest raised by this session has been so great. It testifies the people here and the kind of questions raised, that we should have had 2 sessions on this topic. Thank you. Next year, perhaps you can bear that in mind.
Thank you very much. I am sure somebody will hear you in the Secretariat.
Mention the lunch on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm being reminded that there is, we have a lunchtime seminar on Thursday on scaling up South-South as an instrument to scale up solutions for scaling up. So you are cordially invited to the lunchtime seminar on Thursday, and we even have a breakfast. If you come on Thursday morning, we'll offer you coffee for your good idea. Gentleman there.
Hello, my name is Abu Hassiani. I'm representing East African Tea Trade Association. I'm from Kenya. I would like to make an observation on the question that His Excellency, the Ambassador for Israel, made to China. That is, how do you ensure that whatever project you have assisted will continue? I would like to observe that this is an ever-present problem even in other areas. For the beneficiary to have an absolute vision exactly like you is an ever-present challenge. I do believe there is a project in Kibwezi which was assisted by the Israelis, and when they left, after some years, we had actually to ask them to come back because the vision that they had was not being adopted by the locals. And I would like to say that it's in fact related to scaling up. Unless the beneficiary adopts, buys in, is in fact of the vision that you had, then you have that problem of when you go, the whole thing sort of tends to die. But it is an ever-present challenge that when you are actually trying to ensure that the beneficiary benefits, you must infuse your vision. And this is the whole point of these tours or visits to the place where it is actually working. And I do believe that the Israelis are very good at this. They do take farmers to go and see, so that the farmers can see it's possible. It was an observation, but it's also related to scaling up, and I have met it in my work.
Thank you very much for your observation. I see a hand here in front of me, and then a gentleman there. And then we move on to this side of the... Please.
Thank you, sir. Just one observation.
Sorry,
okay.
If you don't mind, let's just move like this way. I have somebody here in front of me, and then we move on to that side, yeah? If you don't mind, yeah? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Soran. I will speak Ifaracha. Merci. Donc, je voudrais...
Thank you very much. Very briefly on this section, because there is very little time. But I wanted to underscore a number of things which are very important within South-South cooperation, our projects. I think the issue of monitoring and evaluation is very important. And then these projects have to be made sustainable. So as regards South-South cooperation on projects. And the next thing is national ownership, which is extremely important. National ownership of these projects has to be taken when we're talking about cooperation. I'm not going to go in detail because time is short. As regards development in China, this also needs to be borne in mind in specific context, because we have different contexts in various countries. So we cannot export a program which was successful in one country and implement this in another country. There are certain similarities amongst countries, but there are also differences. There are certain things which are not compatible with the national context of other countries. So within South-South cooperation, we have to be talking about things which have certain similarities when we're implementing projects. Thank you very much.
Cool. The gentleman on the third row, and then green tie. Yeah, you. Without tie, and then the green tie.
Okay. Without tie. I just would like to thank the representative of China for what he presented. And I would like to tell that maybe we used to receive aid and support from different countries. But what I liked in his presentation that he said, according to our objectives. I mean, sometimes we miss our objectives because we would like just to receive and to fill some gaps in our countries. So, but I like very much the word he mentioned regard to our objectives. Thank you very much for what you have taught us today.
Thank you very much. The gentleman, it's not a tie, it's
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's a code or something.
Yes, my green tie represents green economy.
Okay, please.
3 points I just would like to hear about on Thursday. One, on the area of scale-up. My name is Robert Mwaniki from Kenya. I'm a social entrepreneur with food technology experience. I think the best case we have in Kenya, and it really should be studied and presented as a case study, for me, is Moya irrigation scheme. It is a rice scheme, and every time I travel on that road going home, I see the farmers have extended the acreage by turning every marsh area into a rice paddy. Every flat area has been now converted into rice production all the way up to the borders of Embu district. Number two, on knowledge management, as we talk here, we need to know how to manage this rainfall situation, because right now we are at the end of October, we have not had any rains all the way from Nairobi to Mount Kenya. We are worried, so even when we talk of water stress and we talk of conservative agriculture, we can't do it unless we get a little bit amount of rain. Thank you. The third one is on water levels. I'm told the water levels in Lake Nakuru, Lake Bogoria, Lake Baringo is rising so high that the gates are already flooded and there has been no rain in that area. Is that a consequence of climate change? Maybe this is good food for thought for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please come back on Thursday to get your answers. Can I take just 2 questions here? I'm told that we have, of course I know we are over time, apologies to interpreters, but next time we'll make sure we're given more time for this session. Please.
Thank you very much. Ahmed Hussein, I am from the UN Sudan and also the UN country team focal point. I think I would like to take the last statement by the last speaker, which is, I think, the country director of IFAD. Really, at this juncture, I think the South-South cooperation, one of the main reasons behind it is the shrinking of resources. This is part of the many others reason. And looking at the initiative from IFAD and FAO, I think that will take us a step forward in the complementarity of some kind of initiative and also complementarity in resources and program. And this is, I think, one of the key notes that has been mentioned yesterday by the Deputy Secretary General Jan Eliasson, who stressed the focus on how the UN can work as entire family with all the resources and all the programs so as to make impact and to make some kind of such results. And this is, I think, what is lagging behind of the most of the fragmentation that is we witnesses from most of the UN agencies working. For instance, I take that also in Sudan, for instance, and I think the gentleman who mentioned the IFAD, we thought that IFAD with the less of resources, with the limited of resources, but it could work very hard in the area of rural development in a very remote area and very sensitive area. But that is, if there is a complementarity within the entire UN family, I am sure that the benefit will be of great, and also the narrow gap of the conflict within some zones area, it will also be mitigated, and this is why we raise this as a kind of let us think about at the end of this forum we can get out of this by such an action point for the whole entire UN family can work together and achieve that goal. And thank you.
Thank you very much. That will be the last intervention on that side, please.
Okay. Habari zenyu. Mimi naitwa Frederick Odhiambo. Mimi ni Director for Poverty Transition Initiative. Swali yangu ni hii. Kwa nini hapa Kenya tuko na kila kitu ya kulima?
Mr. Chairman, our apologies. Unfortunately, we cannot translate from Kiswahili.
sana kama mahali kama Malaysia.
Okay, please, we will soon be without interpretation. I'm told we have a gentleman next to you who's the Dean of the Ambassadors who raised his hand. So if you do it the African way, maybe if you kindly agree that we ask him to say a few words.
I don't speak Swahili either.
You don't speak Swahili, okay.
No, okay.
So you wanted to speak in Swahili?
Yes.
Okay, so, I'm not sure, I don't think we have interpretation in Swahili
But I
here.
have my colleague here.
Sorry?
I have my colleague here.
Okay, please then make it please very, very short.
Okay.
Okay? Very short, please.
Swali yangu ni hii. Nataka kuuliza kwa nini hapa kwetu Kenya tuko na kila kitu na kitu kama kibrit bado inatoka nchi zingine. Kwa nini sisi tunaweza fanya aje ndio ili hata sisi tukue na kampuni ya kutengeneza mambo ya kutengeneza kibrit hapa kwetu. Na kitu kingine nikiangalia kama Malaysia ni nchi ndogo na imeendelea sana, na hapa tuko na kila kitu, tuko na samba. Hiyo ndio swali yangu, nataka kujua tunaweza fanya aje ndio ili pia sisi tukae kama hizo nchi zingine.
Translation?
Okay, Merrick, he's saying that when comparing Kenya with other countries like Malaysia, South Korea, they also got a blueprint from Kenya, the Vision 2030, and they are ahead of us in terms of infrastructure, in terms of agriculture. And you'll find that Kenya, they also they import something like a matchbox. So the representative, the Kenya representative can give us why we are behind and the other countries are ahead of us. And they just borrowed a blueprint from Kenya. That is what he meant for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. What I would suggest is that if you agree with me, we will not have time to answer those questions. We have taken note of them. We will make sure that we touch on them on Thursday, lunchtime seminar on scaling up and South-South. The other thing I want to ask you is please give us your observation and suggestion. We'll make sure that it will be in the final report. And the other thing before we disband is I am told that there is a ceremony of award of plaques. This is apparently part of the agenda. So if you could kindly bear with us. And while they bring the plaques here, is this for now or later? Now? Okay. Dorothy? Okay, they're waiting for YP, and while they do that, maybe I can give you, it was supposed to have some takeaway, and my colleague Festus has done so well that he's put the bar very high. Well, let me give you what I've tried to do, and maybe you can help me and help us by the end of the day. I've taken GSSD, okay, SF3, that is Global South-South Development, Solution Forum number 3. This is what I've made of it. G for green, growth, gender, etc. S for synergy, solution, sustainability, service delivery, sequencing, scaling up, spaces, systemic approach, specificities. That's for the S. D for diversity, ecosystems, context, approach, diversity in theme, diversity in culture. Thank you for your Swahili intervention. Diversity in policy and so on. And D for drivers. Of course, it's very important to identify the champions. The champions, who are the champions driving the process? And what are also the catalytic factors that are happening? Can be climate change, can be globalization, and so on and so on. SF3 means solution column number 3. S for success, F for failure, and 3. Okay, 3, I have noted here. Learn, learn, and learn. Is Mr. YP here? If not, maybe what we could do is to ask Some of our colleagues, if they may want to respond to any question, or if you want to put any more question or observations on the table for us to pursue in the coming days.
Thanks, Sheikh. Only to this mother who asked for the youth and the importance, address the importance of youth to be involved in innovation and in development. And as such, Procasur has been working very intensely with IFAD during the last years, especially now in Latin America and the Caribbean, rightly in involving better youth in both IFAD projects and in development processes, mainly via rural youth entrepreneurship. And now we're also looking into ways of collaboration, doing it here also in East and Southern Africa. So all of your ideas are warmly welcome. Thank you.
Mr. YP is here. Francis, you want to say something? Yes, we be very brief. Just a few take-home messages and things we should reflect upon. I'm very happy for the very great synergies between the two sessions. First is there is evidence from the various presentations that development solutions are available and that the only thing required now is how to share them, and there is interest and willingness to do that. Also, we also realize that there is no single institution that can actually achieve this. So we need partnerships at all levels. We need inclusive partnerships, and that ties in very well with the need for political will, especially from the government side and also international policymakers, because enabling a policy environment is quite crucial to successful South-South cooperation. There is need for more holistic and more integrated South-South cooperation approaches and initiatives across the various institutions and with the different key players. The message on impact analysis and M&E is very important, and we've been hearing this over and over again. I think we should do a lot more in that area. Also, finally, I want to encourage countries to increase their co-financing. There is no way we have heard from the Chinese representative here, presenter here, that we have to start with what we have. Countries have to increase their own share of co-financing, not expecting that everything has to be paid by someone else. Without that, there can be no success. The shining example of South-South cooperation impact that we have in Nigeria, for instance, that has contributed immensely to the agricultural transformation agenda, is due to the fact that Nigeria has put down $19 million in a trust fund in FAO, paying all the Chinese experts and also promoting this across the country. So countries have to also take responsibilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. What I would like to suggest is that Mr. YP, his colleagues call him YP, which I think is very nice and friendly. Please. First message is that we need more time next time for this event. That's what somebody here said. Please.
First message. Need a message from me? No.
We want to hear from you. And also, I understand there is a ceremony of delivery of, of the plaques. Yeah. Thank you very much. Dorothy, over to you.
All right.
My
Thank you.
message is that South is in action, taking place right here, and you are the makers of history.
Okay.
My voice is loud enough.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the deliberations, all the ideas, all the solutions, and for all the thoughts going forward. It's time now that we want to recognize you as solution presenters, and we have awards. These awards are being presented to our distinguished panelists in recognition of their special contribution and strong commitment to South-South and triangular cooperation. YP, come forward. I think maybe it's better to go in front. Yeah.
one by one. Yeah, sure. I think we'll do one group.
Okay, so we're going to do this in two groups.
Or we can do quick, very quick.
Okay, so we were going to do FAO.
One by one, very quick. So they will have a code, right?
Okay, we were going to, do you want a group?
Yeah, we do it together. Okay.
Okay, so
first line up.
all right, we have, for FAO, the first group is FAO. And if the following people could come forward, Dr. Dennis Garrity, Festus Akinefisi, sorry, Mr. Ghulam Zekria, Saidi Komwa. Okay.
Justice, thank you so much and congratulations.
Okay. Moses, Yu Yang, Wang Yibing, Professor Min Kingwen, Mr. Ilan Flus, and Dr. Sadiq.
Yeah, no. So this is not Moses. Okay, sorry, Wallace. You can have one. Recharge.
Okay.
Yu Yang.
Where's the photographer?
Okay.
Yeah, they need to be down here. The photographer is asking if you would come down front.
Which one is the best view? Okay. Name. One.
Can you put it there?
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Next one. Just read the name. I have you.
Okay. The first group.
Me.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. So I can't see anything. Thank you so very much, comrade. So are we okay? One more. Read the name so they can stand up. I can't read. Yusuf. Yusuf, are we to be generic?
Yeah.
So,
Okay, if you could come down, all of you as a group could come down in front of the platform here so we can have a group photo. In front, stand in front like a class photo.
We do a group photo.
No, this is the FAO group. They're mixed? Oh.
No,
some-
Oil and vinegar. Oil and vinegar.
Okay, the second group is the EFAT group. The first name is Robson Mutandi, Maija Peltola, Steve, Thornlow, Johannes Lin, Abdel Karim Sma, Lu Ki, Dominic Wanjihia, and Sheikh Sarang.
So we would do this, the scripts is wrong because then it doesn't, so we just go to put picture. Excuse me. Read the name, and they will take it. Louder, Liu. Yes, louder, please. My secretariat. Mr. Shea. Great.
I'll turn up on that. I'll use that one.
Okay, so one more person. So you get the right one. You get the right one. This one. Dominic. Yeah. We also do the later with the right one, right?
Okay.
Okay.
IFAT.
Right one later. Just for the group picture. YP. It's okay. You are the champion. You insist. You put me on the spot. Yes. I have to grow. Okay, thank you so very much. Really, thank you guys.